And next situation, of course, is to encrypt the traffic between the device and the access point, so that a access point and the device don't get ratted out by a packet sniffer. And there are many different encryption options: WPA, TKIP, CCMP. There are some options you should not use, like WEP or Cisco Leap. They've been cracked. The other options that I told you probably gonna get cracked soon too, because everything gets cracked eventually, and then they come out with something better. So it's important to use the best available technology that's been proven to work. Authentication is not the same as encryption, but it can be. Authentication means that we are verifying the identity of the person who's connecting to our network. So, in a very simple authentication method, there's a Wi-Fi password. You have to put your password in to get on the Wi-Fi. That's not a very good solution in a large network. If you've got 2,000 employees and they all know the same Wi-Fi password, they're gonna tell their friends. The other option, of course, is since every device has a unique MAC address, you can prohibit, or you can have a whitelist of permitted MAC addresses that can connect to your network. Of course, then every physical device has to be registered with the IT department before it can access the network. Maybe you want to audit devices that come in. You don't want to let users bring their own devices, and so MAC address authentication may be something that you want to consider. Otherwise, it can be very irritating, and of course, like many other things, it's possible to fake your MAC address. So, the IEEE sets all the different standards, and they set standards for Wi-Fi, and 802.1x is the current authentication standard for Wi-Fi. And they talk about EAP, which is a extensible authentication protocol, and their standard. And EAP is not the authentication itself, it's just the carrier. It carries the data that the device uses to authenticate itself with the network. So if you're required to get on the network by entering in your username or password or a certificate, then EAP is handling that information. But EAP doesn't encrypt some of that information, so they came out with PEAP, which is protected EAP, and it encrypts the information that EAP carries. So I need to again emphasize that EAP is just the transportation mechanism. It's not the mechanism itself. So your phone connects to a server to talk to it and decide, and the server decides if the phone can get onto the network, and the server says, give me your username and password, or give me your certificate, and this conversation is being transmitted between the device and the server through EAP. But the way that the device and the server have their conversation is defined by the mechanism. And there are many choices for mechanisms that work over EAP. So there's MD5, there's OTC, there's GTC, there's TLS, and TLS is the best. And the reason the TLS is the best is because of authentication, and most mechanisms authenticate only the device. And what I mean by that is with MD5, for example, the server is checking to make sure that the phone or the computer or whatever is authorized to connect to the network. And like, so what? Well, here's a question. What if I was a hacker and I set up my own Wi-Fi network in your office and gave it the same name, and it looks like a legitimate network, and your phone connects to it. Now your phone doesn't know the difference, and there's no way for the network to prove that it's legitimate. But on EAP TLS, the server has to prove to the device that it's a legitimate network. So the device proves to the network that it's a legitimate device and it's authorized to connect, and the network proves to the device that it's a legitimate network. So there's a two-way authentication. Both parties understand each other, and we avoid this thing that we call honeypot, which we're going to talk about later. And it's very important. Again, I can't emphasize it enough. The client won't authenticate a fake network if it's using EAP TLS until somebody finds a way to crack it, which they probably will in a few years, but by then we'll have something better. And of course, some people want to use Active Directory. They want to authenticate to the network with their Active Directory account. You can run network policy server on the Windows server. If you do that, then a group policy and the features that apply will get applied to the user connecting to your network.